Certain stories just stick with you. Maybe they thrilled you, maybe they scared you, maybe they made you dream a little bigger. Some stories you choose, and others were read to you as a child. For me, one of those defining stories was the classic Around the World in 80 Days. For those that don't know, Around the World was written by French writer Jules Verne and tells the story of an English Victorian gentleman, Phileas Fogg, and his butler, Passepartout, as the former attempts to win a wager that he can, and wait for this, travel around the world in 80 days. The book was first published in 1873, when advances in technology meant that the world seemed to be getting smaller. Burns himself had worked it out and timed the trip using the best transport of the day, steamboats, trains, etc. It was indeed possible. However, while these advances made it so that it was quicker to get from place to place, there was still adventure to be had. Unlike today, when you can travel from London to Sydney in 24 hours or jump around Europe for €24, I personally have an interest in travel, and I have often wondered, was this book one of the reasons for it? Most of the book takes place in Asia and the United States, with the initial travel through Europe glossed over. Also, remember that this was at the height of the British Empire, so a lot of the places he visits, most notably India, would have been under British control at the time. The book was a hit on publication, being a bestseller in France, and inspired many adventurers to take on the challenge. One of the most well known cases of this was that of Elizabeth Jane Cochrane, better known as Nellie Bly, who was a journalist at the New York World. She ended up completing it in 76 days and even met Jules Verne in Paris on her travels. The book is light-hearted, simple read, with much of the humour coming from Phileas Fogg's demure and prim and proper persona as he faces challenges along the way. I do wonder to what extent Burns, a Frenchman, was making fun of the English upper class. Fogg's character is put into contrast with that of his butler Passepartout, who, while against the trip at the start, becomes more and more anxious as they progress, wanting the best for his boss and for him to succeed. The novel has been adapted many times over the years, starting in 1919 with a silent film and going all the way up to 2021 with a PBS TV show. The most famous adaptation is probably the 1956 Oscar-winning film starring David Nevin. This is a great film and one that I would highly recommend, but it's not the version I want to talk to you about today. No, the version I want to talk to you about today is the one I watched as a kid that got me interested in the book in the first place, and that is the animated series from the 1980s called Around the World with Willy Fogg. The show was produced by a Spanish animation company, the same company that made D'Artagnan and the Three Musketeers, another beloved 80s cartoon that I watched. Like that series, in Around the World, the characters are anamorphized, with the three main characters being cats. Willy Fogg is, of course, a lion. I loved this show as a kid, and it made me want to become a rich English gentleman when I grow up. The series was meant to be both entertaining and educational, to teach kids about geography, and it was sponsored by Iberian Airways. It does, as you've probably already been able to tell, change the name of the characters, with Phileas Fogg changing to Willy Fogg, Passepartout to Rigodon, and the Indian princess to meet along the way, from Adua to Princess Romy. Various new characters are also introduced. Detective Fix gets a new assistant. Rigodon brings along his old friend from the circus, Tico, but probably the most important new character that's introduced, both from a plot and storyline point of view, is that of Transfer. Transfer is a hired goon employed by one of the men that Fogg has made his wager with to slow down and stop Fogg, to prevent him from completing the trip on time and therefore losing the bet. He acts as a menace to Fogg throughout the series, but also as comic relief for a younger audience. Other than these changes, the story is pretty accurate to the book, or at least as accurate as one should expect from an early 1980s cartoon series. The setup is the same as the book, and many of the plot points are hit, including ones that maybe shouldn't be. The original scripts and treatment for the show touched on the more darker themes of the book. However, due to the target younger and international audience, some of these were toned down. But one bit that did make it in is worth noting. During their trip through India, Fog and Rigadon happen across a ritual sacrifice. A young princess, Princess Romy, is being led through the jungle to be burnt alive with her dead husband. Now, Passport 2 or Rigadon here does save her. Now, I understand why they kept this in. This is a key point in the story as she continues with them for the rest of the journey. So I know why they kept it in. But again, it was a kids' TV show. I was 8 years old when I was watching. And this scene, this sequence remained with me, burnt into my mind as a key part of the story and plot. The show was hugely successful, sparking a sequel series based on Jules Verne's other novels, Journey to the Center of the Earth and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Then in 2008, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the series, a musical was produced in Spain, which also proved successful. There has been rumors of a movie adaptation for a while, but these seem dead, and frankly, I'm glad there is no need. The cartoon exists, and yes, its animation style is simple and maybe out of date, but that is all part of its charm. I loved this series so much as a child that I made my mum read the book to me. I recently reread it and it still holds up. The sense of adventure, of going into the unknown, visiting places that few outsiders have gone. It is a window to a world that simply does not exist anymore. I would highly recommend watching this show if you haven't already, or showing it to your kids. The whole thing is available right here on this very website, so you don't have to go far. As for the book, of course I recommend it, especially if you want to start reading classic or Victorian literature but are intimidated, or have children that you want to introduce to such books. The writing and story is not complex. It moves at a nice pace and it is easy to read. It was my first introduction to 19th century novels and is a genre of fiction that I have enjoyed ever since. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. What was your favorite book growing up as a kid? Mention in the comments below, and once again, thank you all for watching. See you next time.